Welcome back. Mr. Kasuri, now that even President Hamid Karzai has been talking about reaching out to some of the Taliban, this is something which is an idea which has been favored by the Pakistani establishment for a long time. Others, including the Americans, are more open to this idea. Do you think this is going to translate into greater acceptability of Pakistan's inevitable role as a stabilizer, the key stabilizer for the future of Afghanistan?
Well, also for the future of Pakistan, because peace in each country affects the other. You see, it's basically a question of the American will to stay there. The latest ABC opinion polls showed 51% wanted to get out. Now, Pakistan already suffers from a certain memory of the past, where after Geneva Accords, the Americans decided to walk out. And when you have public opinion polls of that nature and leading American officials speaking in rather pessimistic terms, although of course I do understand that recent remarks by Admiral Mullen have to be read in the context of the need by the American military establishment for greater troops, and so they're trying to emphasize the negatives of the situation. Nevertheless, it has an impact on Pakistani mind, Pakistani psyche. Pakistan cannot afford to just move away from the area. We don't have the luxury. Geography doesn't allow that. I don't think currently even the Americans would find that very easy. But of course, the deadline or the break would be 2010 congressional elections. If a lot of progress had not been made by then there will be trouble on all sides.
Having said that, let me turn to General Talat Masood, the follow-up question, which is the acceptability, the growing acceptability of the Taliban. Doesn't this pose a bit of a difficulty for Pakistan that on the one hand, you're fighting these Taliban, as we've seen recently in the Sawat campaign, may happen in Waziristan, at least that's what's been projected recently. And on the other hand, you may also find it in your interest to place at least parts of the same grouping on the negotiating table. How do you balance those two?
Well, it's a very difficult balance, in fact, because I personally feel that, in case the Taliban becomes stronger there, which they have, in fact, and if they become even more and have a political space given to them in a way through negotiations and all, so it will obviously impact on our Talibanization, because, the ideological reverse that is taking place for quite some time will further get an incentive. And I think our Taliban will get stronger. So it's very important that our Taliban are neutralized before their Taliban get very powerful. That is, in a way, one aspect of the domestic politics of Pakistan or the domestic scenario. But I think it's a reality. We will have to deal, and our relations with Taliban have been relatively far better than of any other country. To that extent, there is a distinct advantage.
Even after the Sawat and Malakand campaign, you think we can still rely on those relations?
Of course, because, I think the relationship with Afghan Taliban is somewhat different to that of Pakistani Taliban, because the Pakistani Taliban have been hitting Pakistan government, whereas the Afghan Taliban have not been doing so. And that is why the Americans have been very upset with us for a long time, saying that, you were not taking sufficient action against the Taliban, which were oriented towards Afghanistan. So I think we have to see all this, and there is also a possibility that the present upheaval that is taking place in South Waziristan since the death of Baitullah Masood, many of these Talibans might orient themselves towards Afghanistan, which will obviously bring the American pressure on Pakistan to prevent them from doing so.
Let me turn to Mr. Kasuri for a final question before we go to break, which is that if there is political chaos in Kabul, in the event of a failure of President Karzai to reconcile with Abdullah and the rift widens, what do you think will be the implications for Pakistan, if any?
Well, there will be negative implications, but one good thing that has happened recently is that the Pakistan army now seems to be fighting with the backing of the Pakistani people. In the past, we were, very, very unhappy about assuming ownership of the war. Now, in the case of Swat, and more it seems now, even when the Waziristan operations take place, Pakistani public opinion is backing Pakistan Army. Actually, that is the surest guarantee for stability in Pakistan. A distinction has to be made. As far as the Afghan Taliban are concerned, they say from their perspective there is a foreign occupation. The Pakistani Taliban were indulging in loot and plunder and forcibly trying to impose their version of the Sharia. And they were badly exposed after the Malakand peace agreement when, despite reservations by large segments of urban population and intelligentsia in Pakistan, the government of Pakistan went ahead and signed the agreement. So I think the important thing is, of course, it will have ramifications if there is a problem in Afghanistan. But the important thing is, does Pakistani army have the backing of Pakistani populace? And I think currently it does.
Mr. Kasuri, we have to take a break right now. General Talat Masood will be back in a moment for the concluding segment of this discussion. Do stay with us.